we're going to our final talk and a real highlight that we saved for last, something that hopefully can inspire a lot of you to follow in her footsteps. So our final speaker for the day is Alina Vandenberghe. She's the founder of Chili Piper, and she has done one thing that very, very few people have accomplished, is starting a unicorn. And she's gonna share basically how she's been able to accomplish that. Her company has pulled off Chili Piper as a leading inbound conversion software platform. She's managed to power a lot of the very powerful B2B high growth revenue startups that you know, companies like Spotify, Airbnb, Twilio, Shopify, and many, many more companies are using their service. And she's been doing that from the US, but she's originally from Romania. She's like from, well, she says like from Transylvania. My geographical knowledge is not that good. I don't really know if like really like Transylvania extends that far, but in the US I think we'll let that count. So I ask you all to please give a very, very warm welcome to Alina Vandenberghe. Thank you so much for coming all the way from New York to visit us here in Cluj, in your home country. Thank you so much, Alina.
I'm here in Cluj to tell you my story. Like many other Romanians, I come from very modest means. My parents barely had the means to give us normal things like books or a second pair of shoes. And as a result, being here on stage for me is crazy. I would have never imagined of building something like I've done, coming from nothing. With this kind of growth, a unicorn. Actually, I'm curious. How many of you know how unicorns are assessed? All right, a few hands raised. I didn't know about it until maybe 3 years ago or so. Basically, the market decides how much your company is worth, and it depends on many factors, whether it's a public company or a private company, in our case, a private one, and they look at your revenue. Oh, the wrong slide. They look at your revenue and apply a multiple to it. They take, in our case, about $30 million, and they say you're worth 20 times that or 30 times that. And again, it depends on the industry that you're at, on your growth, on your numbers, on your customer acquisition costs, and some other variables. The way we got an assessment was through a financial transaction that got us close to $1 billion. That's how we are assessed as being a unicorn. There are very few companies that achieve that status in Romania. I think maybe 2 or 3 in the tech sector. And as I was putting these slides together, I was thinking of how to create a blueprint of the things that I've done when we were at 2 million or 3 million bootstrapping, or last year when we were close to 15 million. But then I realized that my journey is very different than your journey. If you here want to create also a unicorn, your path cannot be written by me, cannot be guided by me. My growth journey is very different from your growth journey. So instead, I choose to speak about some things that have transformed my life and have managed to allow me to grow, especially my mindset, to be able to do what I've been able to do. The first lesson I've applied in high school. I actually have a colleague from high school here, and she can testify that's what happened. I started a high school that's called Tudor Vianu in Bucharest. It's a technical high school. We learned programming. And when we started, I spent many, many, many weeks crying after every day that I went to school. I felt a complete imposter in that high school. I felt I did not belong to be there. I had the top Olympics in physics, the top Olympics in programming, the top Olympics in mathematics, and I felt like I could never get to that level. I would never be good enough. My mom was patient with me. She said, just try it, just one more day, one more day. Eventually, I've mustered enough courage to look at what they did. How were they different than the other kids around me? How were they different than me? What books did they read? What did they do at home? What newspaper did they read? How did they spend their time? And by asking a lot of questions, I understood. I slowly started imitating what they were doing. I was slowly starting to see the books that they were seeing, to form the habits that they were forming. And I've never got as good as them. I'd never got a medal in programming. I never got a medal in physics. But I managed to get one of the highest grades when I graduated high school. I've learned that by just looking at what others are doing in the areas where I knew nothing about, there's a small chance that I can learn something. And I still apply the same rules today. For instance, right now, I know nothing about being a content creator. There are a lot of amazing people on Instagram and on TikTok creating all sorts of content that's entertaining, and that's an area that I'm learning right now. And if you look on my TikTok, you'll see very silly things, very poorly edited, but I'm going through the same growth process. I'm learning from the best how to improve that skill set. The second lesson is letting go of labels. This is a really big one. This is a big cultural shift, especially in Romania. In Romania, when you talk to someone, you'll hear a lot of complaining. This person did this thing, can you believe it? We should punish them. There's everything very black and white. And everybody who doesn't conform should be punished. That's how we grew up. That's how we're educated. In school, there are the kids who study very well and those that don't should be punished. It was a big paradigm shift for me to move away from that. And the best example that I can find is the label that I would often get on myself from others that would label me as a nerd. I was the nerd that never wanted to go out, never wanted to party, never wanted to go to parties. And that, in essence, meant that it was a bad thing. Only until recently, I realized that I just had other priorities. I had a stronger need to learn new things than I had to be socially connected. I had a stronger need to advance my skill sets in other departments and not of social communication. And when I read a book, it's called The Nonviolence Communication by Marshall Rosenberg, that I hope everybody can read, that I realized that I can only progress if I see the world in terms of needs. I no longer see the world as good or bad. I see the world of what do I need, what do others need, and can I make those needs met? The third lesson is probably my superpower. I don't care about what other people think of me. I really don't. I know that it's very hard to believe that because we live in a society where the value we place on others is given by our environment. I was told a million times by my parents, Alina, don't wear stuff that shows your belly button. At school, Alina, don't wear makeup because you're not going to be seen well. And the society puts a lot of opinions about how we should act or how should we behave. And that forces us to do things that might not be in our best interest. I've only been able to fully let go of that once I understood that people's opinions are transitory. They're highly dependent on their environment. They're highly dependent on what they're going through. They're highly dependent on what's around them, what others are saying, and their opinions go up and down. Tomorrow they like guns, today they might not, and it really depends on how the environment shapes them. And I cannot find my value on how others' opinions change. I can only find my values inside of me. Only I can decide if I'm worthy. Only I can decide if I'm truly making an impact or not based on the data that I have. That doesn't mean that I don't talk to people to understand how they think about things. Doesn't mean that I don't capture as much information to make an informed decision. But when I make that decision, I make the decision on how I feel about it. This is a big thing because I make a lot of controversial decisions and I have to make really big decisions that impact large number of people and financially have an impact on society. But I've always been comfortable with them because at any point in time, I have the best intentions. This is my important lesson that I've also had to let go culturally from what I've been taught in Romania. In Romania, there's this strange paranoia, I don't know how to call it differently, that everybody's out there to screw you. Everybody's out there to get whatever you have. Everybody's there to take advantage of you. And I grew up thinking that way, and I grew up seeing everybody around me that way. So as you can imagine, when we decided in 2016 to make our company fully remote, no tracking of hours, no tracking of time, just trusting people was like a free fall for me. It was a big moment where I had to let go of every preconceived ideas because whatever you expect of people, they're just going to match your expectation. If you expect them to slack, they're going to slack. If you expect them to have a second job, they're going to have a second job. The only strategy is to assume the best. Always to know that people are very inspired to have growth by themselves. They always want to achieve great things. They always want to have an impact. And if you expect that of them, they're going to match your expectations. So far, that belief has proven correct. We're still a fully remote company with 260 employees, and my trust was only broken 3 times. This is big. And I'll tell you why. Because the 3 people that broke my trust have a very hard time in this day and age to find their next employer based on their reputation. Our reputation is always online. So if they're not to be trusted, that reputation follows them. So it's not on me, it's on them. That's my most important strategy within the company that I've built, is to assume that people are going to always want to be the best version of themselves, and they're always going to want to grow. And you just have to give them the tools, give them the means, expect the best, and just let them achieve that potential. The financial rewards are obviously very motivating, especially for someone who comes from literally nothing. I thought that money can buy you a lot of things and as a result have a big impact on one's life. I started growing my career in corporate America, and 10 years into it, my salary was nothing of the sorts that I expected. My base salary was $300,000, and I thought that was the pinnacle of financial freedom. I could have bought anything. Yet, I realized that financial growth can only help you with the other things that matter. The other things that matter is the impact that you have on the people around you. That's the only thing that matters. Obviously, we build a company that makes economical sense, because otherwise you can't do the other thing. You build a product that people love. You build a product that impacts the company that buy your product. That matters. But a lot more matters that you empower people to grow, that you empower people to reach their potential, that you help the communities around you to get to peace. We have a foundation, and we help a lot with that. I believe that us as a society, we have a lot of room to grow, because we're still quite violent in our beliefs. And I think that there's a lot of room to change. And when you make this goal that you have for yourself a lot bigger than yourself, well, I can tell you, I wake up every morning very, very excited with the opportunity to have an impact. It's a different story. That's it.